After my husband died in a car crash on our 40th anniversary, my sister invited me to Thanksgiving dinner. But when the turkey was served, she publicly announced that the baby in her arms was his and demanded half of his $250 million estate. I asked, "Are you serious?" When she said yes, I couldn't control my laugh. Before we continue, comment where you're watching from and subscribe to the channel. We'd love to see how far our stories are reaching. The room went silent. 23 people staring at me like I'd lost my mind. My sister Pam stood there in her burgundy dress, cradling that baby like it was a winning lottery ticket, and I laughed so hard tears ran down my cheeks. Let me back up. Thomas died on October 15th. We were driving home from dinner at Giovanni's, the same restaurant where he'd proposed 40 years earlier. He'd reserved our usual table by the window, ordered the same wine, held my hand across the white tablecloth and told me I was still the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen. The truck ran a red light at the intersection of Main and Crawford. Thomas saw it coming. He yanked the wheel hard to the left, putting himself between me and the impact. The doctors said he died instantly. I walked away with a broken collarbone and a cut above my eye that needed 12 stitches. For 6 weeks, I moved through life like a ghost. The funeral, the lawyers, the endless paperwork that comes with losing someone who built a $250 million empire from a single hardware store in 1985. Thomas had been careful about everything. His will was airtight. Everything came to me, with provisions for our son Brian after I passed. Then Pam called. "Ruthie, you shouldn't be alone for Thanksgiving. Come to my place. The whole family will be there." I should have known something was wrong. Pam hadn't called me Ruthie since we were teenagers. She'd barely spoken to me at the funeral, just a stiff hug and some mumbled condolences before she disappeared into the crowd of mourners. But I was tired. Tired of the empty house. Tired of reaching for Thomas in bed and finding cold sheets. Tired of cooking for one. So I said yes. Her house in Upper Arlington was packed when I arrived. Cousins I hadn't seen in years. Neighbors. People I didn't recognize at all. The living room smelled like cinnamon and roasting turkey. Children ran between legs. Someone had put on Christmas music even though it was barely November. Brian was there with his wife, Jennifer. He hugged me at the door, but something felt off. His embrace was stiff, brief. Jennifer barely looked at me. Just a quick nod before she went to help Pam in the kitchen. "You okay?" I asked him. "Fine, Mom. Just tired." But his eyes told a different story. They kept darting toward the kitchen, toward Jennifer, like he was waiting for something. Dinner was called at 6. The dining room table had been extended with folding tables to accommodate everyone. I was seated at the far end, between my cousin Martha and a woman I'd never met who spent the entire first course talking about her gallbladder surgery. Pam sat at the head of the table, the seat Thomas would have occupied at our Thanksgivings. She was holding a baby I'd never seen before. A little girl, maybe 6 months old, with wispy dark hair and chubby cheeks. "Whose baby?" I asked Martha. She shrugged. "Pam's, apparently. News to me, too." I watched my sister throughout the meal, the way she held that child, the way she kept glancing in my direction with something that looked almost like triumph in her eyes. A cold feeling started spreading through my chest. The turkey was carved. Plates were passed. And then Pam stood up, tapping her wine glass with a fork until the room fell quiet. "I want to thank everyone for being here today," she said, her voice carrying that theatrical quality she'd perfected over the years. "Especially my sister Ruth. I know this has been a difficult time for her." Murmured condolences around the table. I nodded, wanting this moment to be over. "But I have an announcement to make." Pam's smile widened. "Something I've been keeping secret for too long." She lifted the baby higher, turning so everyone could see. "This is Emma. She's 6 months old. And her father." She paused for dramatic effect, her eyes locking onto mine. Her father was Thomas Campbell, my sister's husband. The gasps around the table were audible. Martha's fork clattered against her plate. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." I felt every pair of eyes in the room swing toward me, waiting for my reaction. "Thomas and I were in love," Pam continued, her voice thick with false emotion. "For over 2 years. He was going to leave Ruth, He told me so. But then the accident. She dabbed at her eyes with a napkin. He never got the chance. I sat frozen, not because I believed her, but because I couldn't understand why she would tell such an obvious lie. And so, Pam said, straightening her shoulders, I'm formally requesting what Emma deserves. Half of Thomas's estate, $250 million. Half of that should go to his daughter. The room was completely silent now. Even the children had stopped making noise, sensing the tension. I looked at Brian, my son, my only child. He was staring at the table, his jaw tight, his hands clenched into fists. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Brian, I said quietly, look at me. He didn't move. Brian. Finally, he looked up, and what I saw in his face made my heart crack. Doubt, suspicion, pain. He believed her. My own son believed his aunt over his mother. Are you serious? I asked Pam, my voice steady despite the earthquake happening inside my chest. Completely serious. She shifted Emma to her other hip. I have proof. Text messages, photos, hotel receipts. Thomas loved me, Ruth. I'm sorry you have to find out this way, but Emma deserves her inheritance. I stared at my sister, this woman I'd grown up with, shared a bedroom with until I was 18, stood beside at her wedding, held her hand through her divorce, lent money to when she lost her job 3 years ago. $40,000 I never asked her to repay. And then I started laughing. It bubbled up from somewhere deep in my chest, uncontrollable and wild. I laughed until my sides hurt, until tears streamed down my face, until Pam's expression shifted from triumph to confusion to anger. What's so funny? She demanded. You, I managed between gasps. This whole thing. It's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. I don't see what's amusing about Thomas had a vasectomy in 1988. I wiped my eyes, finally getting my breathing under control. 3 months after Brian was born, we decided one child was enough. The procedure was done at Cleveland Clinic. I have the medical records. The silence that followed was different from before. Heavier. I watched the color drain from Pam's face. That's not possible, she stammered. He never told me. Why would he tell you? Why would my husband discuss his reproductive choices with my sister? I stood up slowly, my legs surprisingly steady. Whoever that baby's father is, Pam, it's not Thomas. It's physically impossible. Brian's head snapped up. Mom, are you sure? I was there, Brian. I drove him to the appointment. I picked him up afterward. I changed the bandages for a week. I looked at my son, seeing the confusion warring with hope on his face. Your father was many things, but a liar wasn't one of them. And neither am I. Pam's mouth opened and closed. The baby in her arms started fussing, perhaps sensing her holder's distress. Around the table, people were whispering, shifting uncomfortably in their seats. You're lying, Pam finally said, but her voice had lost its confidence. You're making this up to protect his reputation. I have nothing to protect. Thomas was a faithful husband for 40 years. The only reputation being destroyed here is yours. I picked up my purse from the back of my chair. My hands weren't shaking anymore. The grief that had been crushing me for 6 weeks had crystallized into something harder, colder. I'm going to go now, I said to the room at large. I apologize for the disruption to your Thanksgiving. Martha, the sweet potatoes were excellent. I walked toward the front door, my heels clicking against Pam's hardwood floors. I was almost there when I heard Brian's voice behind me. Mom, wait. I turned. He was standing in the dining room doorway, Jennifer hovering behind him with an expression I couldn't read. Is it true? He asked. About the vasectomy? Yes, Brian. It's true. Then why would Aunt Pam say, I don't know, but I did know. I'd always known, even if I'd refused to see it. Your aunt has wanted what I have for as long as I can remember. My grades, my boyfriend, my husband, my life. I paused, feeling the weight of 40 years of sisterly competition pressing down on me. Apparently now she wants my money too. I left before Brian could respond. The November air hit my face like a slap, clearing my head. I sat in my car for 10 minutes before I was calm enough to drive, my breath fogging the windows. Somewhere in that house, my sister was trying to explain away the unexplainable. My son was questioning everything he thought he knew, and I was sitting in a parking lot, realizing that the real tragedy wasn't losing Thomas. It was discovering how many people were willing to profit from his death. The drive home took 45 minutes. I spent every second of it thinking about the vasectomy records in my filing cabinet. The ones I'd kept for 35 years because Thomas always said you never throw away medical documents. He was right, as usual. When I got home, I went straight to his office. The room still smelled like him, leather and coffee and the sandalwood aftershave he'd worn since 1983. I sat in his chair, behind the desk where he'd built his empire, and I pulled out the folder marked Medical Thomas. The records were all there. The consultation, the procedure notes. The follow-up confirming the vasectomy was successful. Everything dated and signed and absolutely irrefutably real. I took photos of each page with my phone. Then I put the originals back in the folder and locked them in the safe Thomas had installed behind his bookshelf. The combination was our anniversary date, October 15th, 1983. 40 years and 3 weeks ago. My phone buzzed, a text from Brian. "Mom, we need to talk. Call me." I didn't call him, not yet. Instead, I sat in Thomas's chair until midnight, remembering the man who had loved me for 4 decades, the man who had never once given me reason to doubt him, the man who had taken a steering wheel to the chest because he couldn't bear the thought of me being hurt. And I wondered how my sister could possibly think I would believe she'd stolen him from me. As if Thomas were a sweater she could borrow and never return. As if 40 years of marriage meant nothing. The baby wasn't his. I knew that with absolute certainty, but someone's baby it was, and I was going to find out whose. The lawyer's letter arrived 3 days after Thanksgiving. I was making coffee when the doorbell rang. A young man in a FedEx uniform handed me an envelope marked Urgent Legal Correspondence. I signed for it without thinking, my mind still foggy from another sleepless night. The letter was from Morrison, Walsh and Partners, a firm I'd never heard of, but the name at the bottom of the page made my blood run cold. On behalf of our client, Pamela Wilson, we hereby provide formal notice of intent to contest the estate of Thomas Edward Campbell, deceased. The words blurred together. Biological child, DNA evidence, paternity claim, equitable distribution. Pam wasn't backing down, despite the vasectomy, despite the impossibility of her claim. She was going forward with a legal challenge. I called Martin Reynolds, the attorney who had handled Thomas's estate planning for 20 years. "Ruth, I just received a copy of this myself," he said when I explained. "It's absurd. They're claiming they have DNA evidence linking Thomas to the child." "That's impossible. Thomas had a vasectomy in 1988. Do you have documentation?" "In my safe. Dated records from Cleveland Clinic." Martin was quiet for a moment. "Good. Keep those secure. Don't show them to anyone until we're ready." He paused. "Ruth, I have to ask. Is there any possibility at all, that Thomas might have had the procedure reversed?" "No." My voice was firm. "We discussed it once, years later, when we thought about having another child. The doctor said reversal was possible, but not guaranteed. Thomas decided it wasn't worth the risk of disappointment. We never pursued it. Then this claim will fail. It has to. But Ruth..." He hesitated. "These things can get ugly. Your sister seems determined." Ugly didn't begin to cover it. By the weekend, the family had fractured into camps. Cousin Martha called to express her support. Her voice hushed like she was reporting from a war zone. "Half the family thinks Pam's telling the truth. They're saying Thomas always had a wandering eye, that you were naive. Thomas never looked at another woman in 40 years of marriage." "I know that, honey. But Pam's been telling stories. Apparently, she has photos of them together. Text messages. Photos can be faked. Text messages can be written to anyone. I'm just telling you what's being said. People are taking sides. The hardest part wasn't the cousins or the distant relatives who suddenly had opinions about my marriage. It was Brian. He came to the house on Sunday afternoon, alone. Jennifer had other plans, he said. His face was drawn, older somehow than it had looked a week ago. He sat in Thomas's chair, something he'd never done while his father was alive, and stared at the floor for a long time before speaking. Mom, I need you to be honest with me. I've never been anything else. Were you and Dad? Were things good between you? I mean, really good? The question hit me like a physical blow. Brian, your father and I were married for 40 years. We had our disagreements like any couple, but we loved each other, completely. Then why would Aunt Pam say these things? Why would she make this up? I don't know what's in your aunt's heart. I stopped trying to understand her a long time ago. Brian looked up at me then, and I saw something that made my stomach drop. Doubt. Real, corrosive doubt. She showed me the photos, Mom. I went very still. What photos? Pictures of her and Dad. At dinner. At what looks like a hotel lobby. One of them hugging. Your father hugged hundreds of people. He was an affectionate man. These looked different. Different how? Brian shook his head. I don't know. Intimate, maybe. The way they were looking at each other. I walked to the bookshelf and pulled down a photo album. The one from Thomas's 60th birthday party 3 years ago. I flipped through the pages until I found what I was looking for. This is your father hugging my colleague Sarah at his birthday dinner. I pointed to the image. And here he is with your cousin Rebecca. And here with the woman from his accounting department. Your father was a warm person. He made everyone feel special. That's why people loved him. Brian studied the photos. These aren't the same. Show me what Pam showed you. I don't have them. She only let me look. Convenient. I sat down across from him. Brian, your aunt is making claims that are medically impossible. Your father had a vasectomy before you were a year old. I have the records. Then show me. I hesitated. Martin had told me to keep the documents secure, but this was my son, my child, who was looking at me like I might be the liar instead of his aunt. Come with me. I led him to Thomas's office, opened the safe, handed him the folder. Brian read through the papers slowly. Consultation notes from Dr. William Henderson. Procedure documentation. Follow-up confirmation. Everything dated 1988. Everything bearing Thomas's signature. This could be old, he said quietly. He could have had it reversed later. He didn't. We discussed it. The doctor said reversal wasn't guaranteed, and your father didn't want to get our hopes up for nothing. But you don't have proof he didn't reverse it. I stared at my son, this boy I had carried in my body, nursed through fevers, driven to Little League games, helped with college applications, the boy who had stood at his father's grave 6 weeks ago and wept like his heart was breaking. Brian, why are you looking for reasons to believe your aunt over your mother? He flinched. I'm not. I just want to know the truth. The truth is that your father was a faithful husband. The truth is that your aunt is lying. The truth is that someone else is the father of that baby, and Pam is using her to try to steal money she didn't earn and doesn't deserve. Then why would she do this? Why would she destroy her relationship with you over a lie? Because Pam has always wanted what I have. She wanted our father's attention when we were children. She got it. She wanted my first boyfriend in high school. She took him. She wanted the life I built with Thomas, but she couldn't have it. So now she wants the money instead. Brian was quiet for a long moment. Mom, that sounds paranoid. Does it? I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. 3 years ago, when Pam lost her job, I lent her $40,000. She's never paid back a cent. 5 years before that, I co-signed a loan for her condo. She defaulted. I paid it off so her credit wouldn't be ruined. When she got divorced, I paid for her lawyer because she was broke, and Stephen was threatening to leave her with nothing. I showed him the records, every transfer, every payment, every time I had bailed my sister out of her own messes. I have loved your aunt my entire life despite her flaws. I have given her money, time, support, everything she needed. And this is how she repays me, by trying to take what your father built, by trying to convince his own son that he was a cheater and a liar. Brian's face had gone pale. I didn't know about any of this. Because I never told you. I never wanted you to think poorly of family. Maybe that was a mistake. He stood up, the medical record still clutched in his hands. I need time to process this. Take all the time you need. But Brian? I waited until he looked at me. Remember who raised you. Remember who was there for every moment of your life. And remember who showed up 6 weeks after your father's funeral with a baby and a demand for money. He left without saying goodbye. I watched him drive away, his taillights disappearing around the corner, and I felt something shift in my chest, a wall going up where there used to be open space. That night, Jennifer called. Not Brian. Jennifer. Ruth, we need to talk about this situation. I was in bed, staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. Again, what situation is that? The estate, the baby, all of it. Her voice was crisp, businesslike. Brian is torn apart over this. It's affecting his work, his health, our marriage. I'm sorry to hear that. Perhaps if his aunt stopped lying. Ruth, let's be practical. Whether the baby is Thomas's or not, fighting this in court will take years. It will drain the estate. It will destroy what's left of the family. She paused. Maybe it would be better to just settle. I sat up in bed. Settle. Give Pam something, enough to make her go away. 20 million, 30 million. It's a fraction of the total estate. Then everyone can move on. Let me make sure I understand. You're suggesting I give my lying sister $30 million to make her stop lying? I'm suggesting we find a practical solution. Here's a practical solution. Pam can take a DNA test. When it proves Thomas isn't the father, she can apologize, and we can all pretend this never happened. She won't agree to that. Why not? If she's so confident about her claim? Jennifer was silent. That's interesting, isn't it? I said. She's demanding half of a $250 million estate based on biological paternity, but she won't take a test that could prove her case instantly. The legal process is complicated. The legal process is simple. DNA doesn't lie. Your aunt-in-law does. I hung up before she could respond. Sleep didn't come that night either. I lay in bed, Thomas's pillow still smelling faintly of him, and I thought about the conversation with Jennifer, the careful phrasing, the push toward settlement, the casual suggestion that I should pay $30 million to make my problems disappear. Something was wrong. Something beyond Pam's obvious greed. The next morning I made a call I should have made weeks ago. Davidson Investigations. How may I help you? I need to speak with Ray Davidson. Tell him Ruth Campbell is calling. Ray had done security consulting for Thomas's company for 15 years. He'd also done some private work for us over the years, background checks on potential business partners, that sort of thing. He was thorough, discreet, and absolutely loyal to Thomas's memory. Ruth, he said when he came on the line, I've been wondering when you'd call. You've heard? Everyone's heard. Your sister's been making noise all over town, talking to reporters, posting on social media. My stomach clenched. Social media? Nothing direct, just vague posts about finally getting justice and the truth coming out. Enough to get people speculating. I closed my eyes. Ray, I need your help. Name it. I need to know who the father of that baby really is. And I need to know why my sister is so confident about a claim that's medically impossible. You have the vasectomy records? In my safe. Good. Don't let anyone else see them until I tell you. Not even your son. Too late for that. Ray was quiet for a moment. Ruth, I'm going to ask you something and I need you to be honest. Is there any possibility, any at all, that you're wrong about this? None. You're sure Thomas never had it reversed? I'm sure. And there's no way those medical records could be falsified? They're from Cleveland Clinic, dated 1988. You can verify them independently. Then your sister is either delusional or running a con. He paused. Based on what I know about Pamela Wilson, I'm betting on the con. That's what I need you to prove. I'll start digging today. But Ruth, be careful. People do desperate things when there's this much money involved. And your sister seems pretty desperate. I thanked him and hung up. Then I sat in Thomas's chair and looked around his office at the books he'd read, the awards he'd won, the photos of our life together covering every surface. Someone was trying to rewrite our history, to paint my husband as a cheater, to convince my son that his father's memory was a lie. I wasn't going to let that happen. But I also couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something. Something important. Something that connected Jennifer's strange phone call to Pam's impossible confidence to Brian's willingness to doubt me. The truth was out there. I just had to find it before it destroyed what was left of my family. December came in cold and gray. Columbus winters have a way of settling into your bones, making everything feel heavier than it should. I moved through the house like a stranger, avoiding rooms that held too many memories. Brian stopped calling. At first, I told myself he just needed space, time to process, time to sort through the lies and find his way back to the truth. But as the days turned into weeks, the silence became its own kind of answer. I tried calling him twice. The first time, Jennifer answered and said he was unavailable. The second time, it went straight to voicemail. I left a message asking him to call me back. He never did. The isolation was worse than the grief. When Thomas died, I had people around me. Neighbors bringing casseroles. Friends sitting with me in the evenings. Brian checking in every day, sometimes twice. Now I had nothing but the sound of the furnace kicking on and off, and the occasional call from Ray Davidson with updates that led nowhere. The baby's birth certificate lists the father as unknown, he told me during one of our conversations. Pam gave birth at Grant Medical Center. Paid cash for everything. No insurance records to trace. Who pays cash for childbirth? Someone who doesn't want a paper trail. The legal proceedings moved forward with agonizing slowness. Pam's lawyers filed motion after motion, requesting document production, demanding depositions, asking for extensions. Martin told me it was a delay tactic, designed to wear me down, to make me consider settlement. She's betting you'll get tired, he said. That you'll decide it's easier to write a check than fight. I've never taken the easy way out of anything in my life. I know. But Ruth, you should prepare yourself. This could take years. Years. The word hung in the air like a death sentence. Years of legal battles, years of family division, years of watching my son drift further away. The night before Christmas Eve, I found myself in Thomas's closet for the first time since his death. His suits still hung in neat rows, organized by color the way he liked them. His shoes were lined up on the shelf below. His ties hung from a rack on the inside of the door. I pressed my face against one of his jackets and breathed in. The scent was fading. Soon it would be gone entirely, and I would have nothing left of him but photographs and memories, and the money everyone seemed so desperate to take. That's when I noticed the shoebox. It was on the top shelf, pushed to the back, half hidden behind a stack of sweaters. I didn't remember ever seeing it before. Thomas wasn't a shoebox and memories kind of man. He kept everything organized in filing cabinets and cloud storage. I pulled it down and sat on the closet floor, my back against his shirts, my legs stretched out in front of me. Inside the box were letters, dozens of them written in Thomas's neat handwriting, all addressed to me. The first one was dated 20 years ago. My dearest Ruth, I'm writing this because there are things I've never been able to say out loud, things that feel too big for spoken words. I know about Pam. I know she tried to kiss me at your parents' anniversary party last year. I know she's been making comments about our marriage, suggesting you're too old for me, too boring, too whatever. I know she wants what you have. I didn't tell you because I didn't want to hurt you. Pam is your sister, family. I know how much that means to you. So I kept my mouth shut, and I kept my distance from her, and I hoped she would eventually give up. But I need you to know, in case something ever happens to me. I have never loved anyone but you. I never will. Pam could offer me the world and I wouldn't take it. You are my world. I'm putting this letter in a box because I don't know how to give it to you. Maybe someday you'll find it. Maybe someday you'll need to read these words. Forever yours, Thomas. I sat there on the closet floor, tears streaming down my face, reading letter after letter. Thomas had been writing to me for 20 years, recording moments he wanted to remember, confessing fears he couldn't voice, expressing love in ways he found difficult to say. And throughout it all, one theme repeated: Pam. Your sister called again today, third time this week. I didn't answer. Pam showed up at the office, said she needed to talk about something important. I had security escort her out. I saw Pam at the grocery store. She made a comment about how tired you've been looking lately. Suggested maybe you were losing your edge. I told her you were more beautiful than the day I married you. She didn't like that. 20 years of my sister circling my husband like a shark. 20 years of Thomas deflecting her advances, protecting me from the truth of who she really was. The last letter was dated 3 months before his death. My darling Ruth, Pam came to the office again today. This time she said something that worried me. She mentioned Brian's wife, Jennifer. Said they'd become close friends. Said Jennifer understands things about our family that you and I refuse to see. I don't know what that means, but I don't like it. I've instructed Martin to make sure my will is airtight. Everything goes to you. No loopholes, no challenges. If something happens to me, I want you protected from anyone who might try to take what we've built. You probably think I'm being paranoid. Maybe I am, but I know your sister, Ruth. I've watched her for 40 years. And I know she won't stop until she gets what she wants. Whatever happens, remember, I chose you. Every day for 40 years I chose you, and I would choose you for 40 more if time would let me. All my love forever, Thomas. I read that letter 5 times. Then I read it again. Jennifer and Pam, close friends, understanding things about the family. I thought about Jennifer's phone call suggesting I settle, her careful phrasing, her insistence that fighting would destroy the family. I thought about Brian's sudden doubt, his willingness to believe photos and stories over decades of lived experience. I thought about the shoebox hidden on the top shelf, as if Thomas knew I would need it someday, as if he was reaching out from beyond the grave to warn me. My husband had seen this coming. He'd tried to protect me, in his quiet way, and I had been too wrapped up in grief to see what was right in front of me. The next morning, I called Ray Davidson. I need you to look into someone else, I said. Jennifer Campbell, my daughter-in-law. What am I looking for? Connections to my sister, financial records, anything that doesn't add up. This is going to get complicated, Ruth. If Brian finds out, Brian has already chosen his side. I need to know why. Ray was quiet for a moment. Okay, I'll dig into Jennifer. But Ruth, whatever I find, it might make things worse before they get better. Things can't get much worse. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. In my experience, they always can. After we hung up, I went back to the shoebox. I read through every letter again, looking for details I might have missed. Names, dates, anything that could help me understand what my husband had seen that I'd been blind to. In one of the middle letters dated 12 years ago, I found something. Pam borrowed money from your parents again. $15,000 this time. Your mother told me at Sunday dinner. She was worried, said Pam always has some crisis that needs funding. She asked if I thought there was something wrong with her. I didn't know what to say. How do you explain to your mother-in-law that her daughter is a bottomless pit of need? That no amount of money will ever be enough because the problem isn't financial. It's something deeper, something broken at her core? I just said I'd keep an eye on things. What else could I do? I set down the letter and stared at the wall. My mother had worried about Pam, too. Had seen the pattern even then. And she'd gone to Thomas, not me, because she knew how protective I was of my sister. Everyone had seen it, except me. I was the last to know. The last to understand what Pam really was. The last to accept that my love for my sister had blinded me to her true nature. And now that blindness had cost me my son. The house felt different after that night. Smaller somehow. Quieter. But also clearer, like the fog that had surrounded me since Thomas's death was finally lifting. I spent Christmas alone. No one called. No one came by. I made myself a simple dinner and watched old movies and pretended it was just another night. But inside, something was changing. The grief was still there, but it was making room for something else. Something harder and colder and more determined. My sister had taken enough from me. My trust, my peace, my son's belief in his own mother. She wasn't going to take Thomas's legacy too. I just needed to figure out how to stop her. Ray Davidson called on January 8th with news that changed everything. I found the father, he said without preamble. I set down my coffee cup so hard it cracked against the counter. Who? His name is Marcus Webb, 34 years old. Used to work at Thomas's company as a regional sales manager. Fired 18 months ago for falsifying expense reports. I don't remember that name. Thomas handled it personally, kept it quiet to avoid embarrassment for everyone involved. Webb had a family, kids. Thomas didn't want to ruin him entirely, just wanted him gone. So this Marcus Webb and Pam started seeing each other about 2 years ago. I found hotel records, credit card charges, even some photographs from a trip to Florida they took together last March. I sat down heavily in my kitchen chair. March. That would be about 9 months before the baby was born. Exactly. The pieces were falling into place. Marcus Webb, angry at Thomas for firing him. Pam, forever jealous of what I had. The two of them finding each other, recognizing a shared enemy. There's more, Ray continued. Webb's wife divorced him 6 months ago. She found out about Pam and kicked him out. He's been living in an apartment in Reynoldsburg ever since, barely making rent. Does he know about the baby? That's where it gets interesting. According to his ex-wife, Webb doesn't believe the baby is his. Pam told him she was seeing someone else at the same time. Someone wealthy and important. She was laying the groundwork. Making him think Thomas was the father, too. It looks that way. But here's the thing, Ruth. Webb is angry. At Pam for lying to him. At Thomas for firing him. At the world in general. And he's broke. I understood what Ray was suggesting. You think he might talk to us. I think he might talk to anyone who's willing to listen. And maybe pay for his time. Set up a meeting. 3 days later, I sat across from Marcus Webb in a coffee shop on the east side of town. He was younger than I expected, with tired eyes and a 3-day beard. His clothes were wrinkled. His hands shook slightly around his cup. Mrs. Campbell, he said, not quite meeting my eyes. I'm sorry about your husband. Thank you. I didn't know about any of this when it started with Pam. She told me she was divorced, lonely, looking for someone who understood her, and you understood her. He laughed bitterly. I thought I did. Turns out I was just convenient. A warm body while she was working on her real plan, which was getting close to someone at your husband's company, learning the business, finding weak spots. He shook his head. She pumped me for information for months. Names, schedules, security protocols. I thought she was just interested in what I did. Stupid. What kind of information was she looking for specifically? Financial stuff mostly. How much the company was worth. How decisions got made. Who handled the money. He paused. She was real interested in your husband's personal schedule. Where he went, who he met with. When he traveled, my blood ran cold. Why would she need to know that? She said she wanted to understand the business world better. Said maybe she could get a job there someday. Marcus met my eyes for the first time. But that wasn't it, was it? She was planning something. Yes, she was planning to claim my husband fathered her child. His face went white. What? I explained everything. The Thanksgiving announcement, the legal challenge, the demand for half the estate. That's insane, Marcus said when I finished. The baby is mine. I mean, I'm pretty sure. The timing is right. Would you be willing to take a DNA test? Hell yes. I've been wanting one since the baby was born, but Pam keeps putting me off. Says the stress would be bad for Emma. That we should wait until everything settles down. She's stalling because she knows what the test will show. Marcus nodded slowly. She played me. This whole time, she was using me to get pregnant, and then she was going to pass the baby off as someone else's. Not just someone else's, my husband's. A man worth $250 million. Jesus. He rubbed his face with both hands. I can't believe I was that stupid. You weren't stupid. You were manipulated by someone who's been perfecting her craft for 50 years. I reached into my purse and pulled out an envelope. Inside was a check for $10,000. What's this? Compensation for your time and cooperation. I need you to take a DNA test. I need you to be willing to testify about your relationship with Pam. And I need you to keep this conversation confidential until my lawyer tells you otherwise. Marcus stared at the check. This is a lot of money. It's a fraction of what your testimony will save me, and it's fair payment for the truth. He took the check. I'll do whatever you need. That woman took 2 years of my life and made me believe she loved me. Turns out I was just a sperm donor for her scam. We shook hands. As I left the coffee shop, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. The DNA test was arranged for the following week. Ray Davidson hired a private lab, one that couldn't be connected to me or my lawyers. Marcus provided his sample willingly. Getting Emma's was more complicated. We need something with her DNA on it, Ray explained. A pacifier, a bottle, a piece of clothing with saliva or skin cells. Something that was definitely hers. How do we get that without Pam knowing? That's where it gets tricky. The solution came from an unexpected source, Jennifer. She called me on a Sunday evening, 2 weeks after my meeting with Marcus. Her voice was different than before. Uncertain, almost frightened. "Ruth, I need to talk to you. I'm listening, not on the phone, in person. Can we meet somewhere private?" We met at a park near my house, both of us bundled against the January cold. Jennifer looked terrible. Dark circles under her eyes. Her usually perfect hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She was thinner than I remembered. "Brian doesn't know I'm here," she said immediately. "He would be furious. Then why are you here?" She stared at the frozen pond in front of us for a long moment before answering. "Because I've done something terrible, and I don't know how to fix it." "Tell me." The story came out in fragments. Jennifer had met Pam at a charity event 3 years ago. They'd connected over shared frustrations. Jennifer feeling overshadowed by Thomas's success. Pam feeling cheated out of what she deserved. They'd become friends. Then conspirators. "It started small," Jennifer said. "Pam would ask questions about the family, about you and Thomas, about the business. I thought she was just curious. But she wasn't. No. She was building a case, looking for any weakness she could exploit." Jennifer turned to face me, her eyes red-rimmed. "When she got pregnant, she told me the plan. Said Marcus was the father, but she was going to claim it was Thomas. Said with the right evidence, she could force a settlement worth millions. And you went along with it." I thought. She trailed off, shaking her head. "I don't know what I thought. Pam made it sound so reasonable. She said you had more money than you could ever spend, that sharing some of it would barely affect your lifestyle, that Thomas had always been dismissive of her and this was just evening the score. My husband was dismissive of her because she spent 40 years trying to seduce him away from me." Jennifer's head snapped up. "What?" I told her about the letters, about Thomas's documentation of Pam's advances over the years, about his quiet vigilance in protecting me from the truth of my sister's nature. "I didn't know any of that," Jennifer whispered. Pam said. She made it sound like they'd actually had an affair, like Thomas had promised to leave you for her. And you believed her. She had photos, text messages, things that looked real. Fabricated. All of it. Just like the paternity claim. Jennifer was crying now, tears freezing on her cheeks in the cold air. "Ruth, I'm so sorry. I've destroyed everything. Brian thinks his father was a cheater. He barely speaks to me anymore because he's so consumed with all of this. Why are you telling me now? Because I can't live with it anymore. Because watching Brian fall apart is killing me. Because Pam." She hesitated. "What about Pam?" "She's not who I thought she was. Last week she told me she needs more money. Said if I didn't help her secure funding, she'd tell Brian about my involvement." "She's blackmailing you." "Yes, and I realized this isn't going to end. She's never going to be satisfied. She's just going to keep taking and taking until there's nothing left." I studied my daughter-in-law's face. The fear was real. The remorse might be too, or it might just be self-preservation. Either way, she had something I needed. "I need your help with something. Anything. I need you to get me something with the baby's DNA on it. A pacifier. A used bottle. Something I can have tested." Jennifer nodded slowly. "I'm supposed to see Pam tomorrow. She asked me to babysit while she meets with her lawyers." "Can you do it without her knowing?" "Yes, I can do that." I reached out and touched her arm. "Jennifer, understand something. If you do this, you're choosing a side. Pam will never forgive you. And depending on what else you've been involved in, There may be legal consequences. I know. Are you prepared for that? She met my eyes, and for the first time I saw something like strength in her gaze. I've been preparing to lose everything since the moment I got involved with Pam's scheme. At least this way, I might be able to salvage something. My marriage, Brian's relationship with you, my own self-respect. All right, get me what I need. Then we'll talk about next steps. 3 days later, Jennifer delivered a sealed plastic bag containing a used pacifier and a baby bottle with dried milk residue inside. I handed them to Ray Davidson, who sent them to the lab along with Marcus Webb's DNA sample. The results came back in 48 hours. Marcus Webb was Emma's father. Probability, 97%. I sat in my kitchen with the report in my hands, feeling the weight of vindication settle over me. Not joy, not triumph, just the cold satisfaction of being right. The next step was calling Martin Reynolds. We have proof, I told him. DNA evidence that another man is the father. A witness willing to testify about his relationship with Pam. And a family member ready to expose the whole scheme. Ruth, this is excellent news. With this evidence, we can not only defeat the paternity claim, but potentially bring criminal charges for fraud and attempted extortion. I want more than that. What do you mean? I want Pam to know she was beaten by the people she manipulated. I want her to understand that her own greed brought her down. And I want my son to see exactly who his aunt really is. Martin was quiet for a moment. What do you have in mind? I told him. When I finished, he let out a long breath. That's bold, Ruth. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything in my life. The plan was set in motion. All that remained was the confrontation, and making sure Brian was there to see it. The meeting was scheduled for a Thursday afternoon in Martin Reynolds' conference room. Neutral territory, he called it. A place where everyone would be forced to maintain some semblance of civility. I arrived early, wanting to be seated when the others walked in. The room was impressive in that deliberate lawyer way. Mahogany table, leather chairs, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Columbus skyline. The kind of space designed to remind everyone that money and power were at stake. Martin sat beside me, his briefcase open, documents arranged in neat piles. Across from us, empty chairs waited for Pam and her legal team. Are you ready? He asked quietly. I've been ready for months. The door opened at exactly 2 o'clock. Pam swept in first, wearing a designer suit I was certain she couldn't afford. Her hair and makeup camera-ready as if she expected this to be broadcast on the evening news. Behind her came 2 lawyers in matching charcoal gray, carrying enough paperwork to fell a small forest. And behind them, Brian. My son looked worse than I'd ever seen him. He'd lost weight. His suit hung loosely on his shoulders. The confidence that had always defined him was gone, replaced by something hollow and uncertain. What is he doing here? Pam demanded, pointing at Brian like he was an unwelcome intruder. I invited him, I said. He's family. He deserves to hear the truth. Pam's eyes narrowed, but she said nothing. She took her seat at the head of the table, positioning herself like a queen holding court. Her lawyers flanked her on either side. Well, she said, spreading her hands, you called this meeting, Ruth. What do you want? I want to show you something. I nodded to Martin, who slid a document across the table. This is a DNA test. It establishes paternity for your daughter, Emma. Pam's face went carefully blank. I told you, I'm not subjecting my child to— You didn't have to. We obtained a sample independently. Perfectly legal, according to Ohio family court precedent. I watched Pam's composure crack, just slightly. A tightening around her eyes, a barely perceptible clench of her jaw. That's not possible. You had no access. Jennifer helped us. The name dropped into the room like a bomb. Pam's head whipped toward Brian, her expression shifting from composed to furious in an instant. Jennifer? Brian's voice was hoarse. What does Jennifer have to do with this? Your wife has been working with your aunt for 3 years, I said, keeping my voice steady. They planned this together. The pregnancy, the false paternity claim, the scheme to extort money from our family. That's a lie, Pam snapped. Jennifer was just a friend, someone I confided in. Was she? Martin opened another folder. These are phone records showing over 2,000 calls and text messages between you and Jennifer Campbell over the past 3 years. These are bank records showing 6 separate cash transfers from Jennifer to you, totaling $47,000. And this, he slid a printed email across the table. This is a communication between you and Jennifer, dated 8 months ago, discussing how to manage Ruth once the claim is filed. Brian picked up the email, his hands trembling. I watched his face as he read it, the color draining, the disbelief transforming into horror. "Mom," he said, his voice cracking. "Is this real?" "It's real. All of it. Your aunt seduced a man named Marcus Webb, got pregnant on purpose, and then tried to pass the baby off as your father's child to steal half of his estate. And your wife helped her every step of the way." "Brian, listen to me," Pam said quickly. "Your mother is twisting everything. Jennifer and I were just friends. Those emails are taken out of context. The DNA test proves Marcus Webb is Emma's father," I continued. "Not your father. It was never possible for it to be your father because he had a vasectomy in 1988. Your aunt knew Thomas was sterile. She counted on no one believing me over her." Brian looked up from the email. His eyes found mine, and what I saw there broke my heart. Not anger, not accusation, just devastating, crushing shame. "I believed her," he whispered. "I believed Aunt Pam over you." "Yes, you did. Mom, I'm so sorry. I don't know how. She had photos, text messages. She made it sound so real." "All fabricated. Every single piece of evidence your aunt presented was manufactured to support a lie." I reached into my briefcase and pulled out Thomas's letters. "Your father saw through Pam years ago. He tried to protect me from her. He documented every time she approached him, every advance she made, every manipulation she attempted." I handed Brian the stack of letters. "He wrote these over 20 years. He never told me because he didn't want to damage my relationship with my sister. But he knew what she was. He always knew." Brian opened the first letter with shaking hands. As he read, tears began streaming down his face. "He loved you," he said. "God, Mom. He loved you so much. And I loved him. We loved each other for 40 years. Your aunt couldn't accept that. She couldn't accept that Thomas chose me and kept choosing me every single day of our marriage." Pam stood up suddenly, her chair scraping against the floor. "This is ridiculous. I'm not going to sit here and listen to—" "Sit down, Pamela." My voice was iron. "We're not finished. You can't tell me what to do. Actually, I can. Because right now, you're looking at criminal charges for fraud, attempted extortion, and filing false legal claims. The only way you walk out of this room without handcuffs is if you sit down and listen to what I have to say." Pam's lawyers exchanged uneasy glances. One of them leaned over and whispered something in her ear. She sat down, her face white with fury. "Good. Now here's what's going to happen." I pulled out another document. "You're going to sign this statement acknowledging that Thomas Campbell is not the father of your child. You're going to drop all claims against his estate immediately. And you're going to agree never to contact me, my son, or anyone associated with our family again. And if I refuse, then I will pursue criminal charges to the fullest extent of the law. I will make sure every news outlet in Ohio knows what you tried to do. And I will spend whatever it takes to ensure you never have a moment's peace for the rest of your life." Pam laughed, but it was a hollow sound. "You wouldn't. I'm your sister. You stopped being my sister the moment you decided to desecrate my husband's memory. The moment you tried to convince my son that his father was a cheater and a liar. The moment you used a baby, your own daughter, as a weapon in your scheme." I leaned forward, my voice dropping low. "Do you have any idea what you've done to Brian? What your lies have cost him?" I turned to my son, who was still clutching his father's letters, tears running unchecked down his face. "Look at him, Pam. Look at what you've done. For months he's been tormented by doubt, questioning every memory he has of his father, wondering if everything he believed about his parents was a lie. He barely eats. He can't sleep. His marriage is destroyed. His trust in family, in the very concept of family, has been shattered." I stood up, my hands flat on the table. "And for what? Money? Did you really think I would let you win? Did you really think you could steal from Thomas and I would just accept it? Pam's mask finally cracked. The composed, confident woman who had walked into this room was gone. In her place sat someone smaller, uglier. True. You've always thought you were better than me, she spat. With your perfect husband and your perfect life and your perfect son. You had everything. And what did I have? Nothing. Scraps from your table. I gave you $40,000 when you lost your job. I paid off your condo loan when you defaulted. I funded your divorce lawyer. I invited you into my home, my life, every holiday for 40 years. And you call that scraps? It wasn't enough. Her voice was rising now, losing control. Thomas should have been mine. He was going to be mine. We met at the same party. Did you know that? I saw him first. I was going to introduce myself, but you got there before me. You always got there before me. So this is about Thomas choosing me over you? 40 years ago? He made a mistake. He should have seen that I was the better choice. Thomas didn't make mistakes, Brian said suddenly. His voice was raw but steady, not about people, not about the people he loved. He set down the letters and looked at his aunt with eyes full of disgust. I read these. Every word. My father knew exactly who you were. He saw through you decades ago. And you know what? He felt sorry for you. He said you were broken, that something was missing in your heart that made you incapable of being happy for anyone else. Pam flinched like she'd been slapped. I believed you, Brian continued. You're my aunt, my mother's sister, I thought. I thought family wouldn't lie like that. Not about something this serious. Brian, I only wanted, you wanted money. His voice cracked. You wanted to take my mother's inheritance by pretending my father was unfaithful. Do you have any idea what that did to me? To find out, to think that my father, the man I idolized, had been lying to all of us. He stood up, knocking his chair backward. I couldn't look at his photo without feeling sick. I couldn't visit his grave because I was so angry at him. I treated my own mother like a suspect because your lies sounded more convincing than her truth. Brian, don't. He held up his hand. Don't say my name like we're still family. We're not. We haven't been since you decided my father's memory was worth less than a settlement check. He turned to me, his face crumpling. Mom, I'm so sorry. I don't know how you can ever forgive me. I walked around the table and pulled my son into my arms. He collapsed against me, sobbing, all the weight of the past months finally releasing. You're my son, I said quietly. There's nothing to forgive. You were manipulated by people you trusted. That's not your fault. It's theirs. Over Brian's shoulder, I watched Pam. She sat alone now, her lawyers having retreated to a safe distance. Her makeup was smeared. Her designer suit looked rumpled and cheap. She looked exactly like what she was, a small, petty woman whose own greed had finally caught up with her. Sign the papers, I said, still holding Brian. Sign them and go. I never want to see you again. Pam picked up the pen with shaking hands. For a moment, I thought she might throw it across the room, might make one final stand, might try to salvage something from the wreckage she'd created, but whatever fight she'd had was gone. She signed where Martin indicated, dropped the pen on the table, and stood. This isn't over, she said, but there was no conviction in her voice. Yes, it is. It's been over since the moment Thomas had that vasectomy 35 years ago. You just didn't know it yet. Pam walked out without another word. Her lawyers followed, leaving behind their stacks of useless paperwork like rats abandoning a sinking ship. And then it was just Brian and me, standing in the conference room, holding on to each other like survivors of a shipwreck. I love you, Mom, Brian whispered. I love you too, sweetheart. I always have. I always will. Can we go home? To your house? I don't think I can go back to. He trailed off. Jennifer will have some questions to answer, but that's a conversation for another day. Today, we go home. Together, we walked out of that conference room with our arms around each other. The sun was setting over Columbus, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. It was the first beautiful thing I'd noticed in months. The battle was over, but the healing was just beginning. Spring came early that year. By March, the crocuses in my garden were already pushing through the last patches of snow, purple and yellow against the gray. Thomas had planted them our first year in this house, back when we were young and the future stretched ahead like an open road. I was kneeling in the dirt, clearing away dead leaves, when Brian's car pulled into the driveway. He'd been coming by twice a week since January, rebuilding something that should never have been broken. "Mom, you shouldn't be doing that," he said, walking across the lawn. "I can hire someone. I like doing it. Keeps me close to your father." He knelt beside me, not caring about his dress pants getting muddy. Brian had changed in the months since the confrontation. Lost the hollow look, put back the weight, started sleeping again, started living again. "I brought you something," he said, handing me an envelope. Inside was a check for $47,000. "What's this?" "The money Jennifer transferred to Pam. I recovered it from our joint accounts." He paused. "I know it's not restitution. You didn't lose that money, but I wanted you to have it anyway, for the foundation, the Thomas Campbell Memorial Foundation. We'd launched it in February, using a portion of the estate to fund scholarships for first-generation college students. Thomas had been one himself, working his way through Ohio State while supporting his mother. He would have loved seeing his money help others do the same. "Thank you, sweetheart. Your father would be proud." Brian sat back on his heels, squinting against the spring sun. "I signed the divorce papers yesterday. How do you feel?" "Relieved, mostly. Sad, a little. I thought I knew her. Turns out I didn't know anything." Jennifer had confessed everything after the confrontation. The years of conversations with Pam, the shared resentment, the gradual slide from complaining about family to actively conspiring against it. She claimed she'd never meant for things to go so far, that she'd been swept up in something she didn't understand until it was too late. Maybe that was true. Maybe it wasn't. Either way, Brian couldn't stay with someone who had helped his aunt try to destroy his mother. Some betrayals are too deep to survive. "Have you heard from her?" I asked. "Jennifer? She texts sometimes. I don't respond." "I meant Pam." Brian's jaw tightened. "No, and I don't expect to." My sister had retreated into silence after signing the papers. She'd kept Emma, of course. Marcus Webb had decided he didn't want to be a father after all. Too complicated, he said. Too much history. He'd taken the $10,000 I'd paid him, plus a small settlement from Pam's lawyers, and disappeared to somewhere out west. I thought about Emma sometimes. That innocent baby, born into a scheme, named as a weapon in a war she'd never understand. Part of me hoped Pam would do right by her, would find some way to be a real mother instead of using her as a prop. But I couldn't fix Pam. I'd spent 40 years trying and failing. Some people don't want to be fixed. They want to be pitied. And when that doesn't work, they want to be paid. "Mom?" Brian's voice pulled me back to the present. "Are you okay?" "Just thinking." "About what?" "About how much your father would have enjoyed this spring. He always said the garden looked best in March, when everything was just starting to bloom." Brian was quiet for a moment. Then he reached over and took my hand, his fingers muddy from helping me weed. "I visited his grave yesterday," he said. "First time since the funeral. I sat there for an hour, just talking to him, telling him I was sorry for doubting him, for believing lies about who he was." "What did he say back?" Brian smiled, the first real smile I'd seen from him in months. Nothing, obviously, but I felt, I don't know, forgiven, maybe. At peace. That's all Thomas ever wanted. For the people he loved to be at peace. We finished the gardening together, then went inside for lunch. The house felt different now, still full of Thomas's presence. His books, his photographs, the indent in his favorite chair, but no longer haunted. The grief had softened into something gentler, memory instead of pain, love instead of loss. After Brian left, I sat in Thomas's office, surrounded by his things. The letters I'd found in his closet were in a new box now, organized by date, read and reread until I knew them almost by heart. I pulled out my favorite, the one he'd written on our 30th anniversary. "My dearest Ruth, 30 years. I can hardly believe it. I remember our wedding day like it was yesterday. You walking down the aisle in your mother's dress, the way you smiled when you saw me waiting at the altar, the way my heart felt like it was going to burst right out of my chest. People say marriage is hard work. They're wrong. Loving you has never been work. It's been the easiest thing I've ever done. Every morning I wake up grateful that you chose me. Every night I fall asleep knowing I'm the luckiest man alive. I don't know how many years we have left together, but I know this. When my time comes, I want my last thought to be of you, of your smile, of your voice, of the life we built together. You are my home, Ruth. You always have been. Forever yours, Thomas. I folded the letter carefully and returned it to the box. Then I went to the window and looked out at the garden, where the crocuses Thomas had planted were blooming in the late afternoon light. He'd gotten his wish. His last thought, according to the doctors, had probably been of me. He'd turned the steering wheel to protect me, given his life so I could keep mine. I hadn't understood that fully until now. The depth of it, the weight of it. Thomas hadn't just loved me. He'd loved me enough to die for me, and Pam had tried to make that love into something dirty, into betrayal and lies and stolen children. She'd tried to rewrite our story, to turn Thomas into a cheater and me into a fool. She'd failed. Not because I was smarter than her. Not because I had better lawyers or more money. She'd failed because the truth was stronger than her lies. Because 40 years of faithful love couldn't be erased by fabricated photos and falsified documents. Because Thomas had protected me even from beyond the grave, leaving behind letters that proved exactly who he was. The doorbell rang, interrupting my thoughts. When I opened it, I found a young woman on my porch, holding a manila envelope. "Mrs. Campbell? I'm Sarah Chen from the Tribune. I was wondering if you had time to answer a few questions." "About what?" "About the Thomas Campbell Memorial Foundation. We're doing a feature on local philanthropists, and your foundation has been making quite an impact. 23 scholarships in just 2 months." I hesitated. I'd avoided press attention throughout the legal battle, not wanting to give Pam any additional platforms for her lies. But that was over now. And Thomas's legacy deserved to be told. "Come in, Sarah. I'd be happy to tell you about my husband." We sat in the living room, surrounded by photographs of Thomas at various stages of his life. As I talked about the foundation, about his values, about the man he'd been, I felt something shift inside me. For months, I'd been defending Thomas's memory, fighting against lies, protecting what was real from what was fabricated. But Sarah wasn't asking about any of that. She was asking about his life, his work, his impact. "He sounds like an incredible man," she said when I finished. He was. The best man I've ever known. And the foundation. It's going to continue as long as I'm alive. And after that, Brian will take over. Thomas believed everyone deserved a chance to succeed, regardless of where they started. That belief will outlive both of us. Sarah left an hour later with enough material for her feature. I walked her to the door, feeling lighter than I had in months. The story that would be told now wasn't about scandals or inheritance disputes. It was about love and legacy and the good that one person could do in the world. That evening, I drove to the cemetery. Thomas's headstone gleamed white against the green grass, freshly mowed for spring. I sat down beside it, not caring about my nice clothes, and leaned against the cold marble. "You were right," I said to the empty air. "About all of it, about Pam, about keeping records, about protecting me even when I didn't know I needed protecting." A bird sang somewhere in the trees. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the graves. "Brian's going to be okay. He's coming back to himself. And the foundation is helping people. Young people who remind me of you, back when you were just starting out." I touched the carved letters of his name. Thomas Edward Campbell. Beloved husband and father. "I'm going to be okay too. It took me a while to get here, but I'm okay now. I miss you every day, but missing you doesn't hurt the way it used to. It's more like carrying you with me, everywhere I go." The sky was turning purple and gold, Thomas's favorite time of day. "I'll visit again soon, and I'll bring flowers next time. Those purple crocuses you planted. They're blooming like crazy this year." I stood up slowly, brushing grass from my skirt. As I turned to leave, I paused for one last look at the headstone. "Thank you," I whispered, "for 40 years of love, for protecting me, for showing me what it means to really be loved." Then I walked back to my car, climbed in, and drove home through the fading light. The house was waiting for me, full of memories and possibility. Tomorrow, I would have breakfast with Brian. Next week, the foundation was hosting its first scholarship dinner. Next month, I was planning a trip to Italy, something Thomas and I had always talked about but never done. Life was continuing. Not the life I'd expected, but a life nonetheless. A life shaped by love and loss, and the determination to honor what had been given to me. My sister had tried to take everything from me. She'd failed. Because she'd never understood what I truly had. Not money, not property, not social standing or legal victories. I had 40 years of real love, letters written in secret, saved for when I would need them most. A son who had found his way back from doubt to faith. A legacy that would help young people for generations to come. I had Thomas. Still. Always. And that was something no one could ever steal. Now, I'm curious about you who listened to my story. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever been through something similar? Comment below. And meanwhile, I'm leaving on the final screen 2 other stories that are channel favorites, and they will definitely surprise you. Thank you for watching until here.